Okay, so you're very welcome. This is the presentation on identifying your values. And just to give you an overview in terms of what we are going to discuss over the next 30 minutes. So what are values in the first instance? And thinking about values in the context of work, and also looking at like kind of why are values important? What's the importance of like kind of values to us in the work context, but also I suppose in a life context. And we're going to try a little activity. So what I did do in terms of the email when I invited you to the session this morning, I sent you a Word document, which is like kind of, you know, a 2-page on, well, I think it's 3 actually, but 2 pages in terms of like kind of a values inventory. But I've also uploaded it to the chat feature here in Teams, just in case you didn't get a chance to download that this morning. So essentially, if you go into the conversation or the chat feature, you will find that the work values inventory is there that you can like kind of download it. So you can either download it directly to your desktop or iPad that you're using, or you can open it in a browser, which would allow you then to use it like kind of as we go through the session this morning. And so after we've done that activity, then just look at some next steps. We won't, I suppose, have the time to do like kind of a full scale activity this morning. So there's some additional pieces within that document that you can kind of do yourself in your own time. And then any questions and also some resources that you can look at. Okay, so what are values? So really, I suppose, when we think in terms of values, there are things that are important to us. So what's important for me? I often say to people, you know, so what is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? Is it because you want to make a difference? You are motivated by money? It's important to you because you are a morning person, you know? So all of these things are like kind of things that are personally important to you and reasons that get you up and get you out and active, like kind of in your life. Oftentimes they're beliefs like kind of as well, and they guide you. So they like kind of guide you in terms of decisions and directions that you make, and things that we use like kind of either consciously or unconsciously to measure choices we make. So in deciding like kind of what we want to do or what we don't want to do, or what's a good role for us or a good career path for us to choose, oftentimes like kind of our values may unconsciously be guiding us in terms of those choices. In terms of where they come from, I suppose initially like kind of values are often like kind of shared. So we're learning them like kind of through our family, through like kind of our parents, and the methods like kind of that, you know, in terms of our child rearing or being raised. Also like kind of through our cultural heritage, our ethnicity, like kind of where we come from, local community, nationally. So that can tend to be like kind of, you know, that they're very shared and intrinsic, but I suppose intrinsic to us because we've like kind of grown up with them. But equally, they can be personality related. So like, for example, you'd often hear like kind of people talking about, you know, what's important to them or what they value is helping others, or maybe it's managing others or making a difference. So that can be like kind of, you know, intrinsic to the personality. And then some of them, I suppose, oftentimes you'll hear like kind of people talk about what's the difference between a need and a value. So a need, in a sense, can be something that's very dynamic. You know, it's right now, I need shelter. But the value that need can incur can be like kind of, you know, it tends to be more longer term, so security. And so needs can often impact on our value system, like kind of going forward. And again, that like kind of ties back into our shared values, like kind of in our family values. So in terms of, I suppose, how and why they're important in a work context, because obviously values like kind of will influence our life, but then if we're like kind of looking, you know, specifically at like kind of work, career choice itself, when we're like kind of thinking about what we want to do and where we want to go, there's a number of factors involved. So what I'm good at, my skills, my competencies, my experience, so what I've done before, where I've been. So that's a factor that it will influence, you know, the career choice or the career path I pursue. Then what's required by me from the organization or the career path I want to pursue. So what do I need to like kind of learn to do, to the experience that I need to develop. So yeah, I mean, in a sense, in an immediate sense, that's like nearly a job description. So, you know, the job description is there telling you what you need to be able to do and what's required for you, and then your skills and competencies, experience, or like kind of, you know, your own experiences, like kind of to tie into that. And then what, like kind of how, I suppose the other aspect of like kind of that career choice is what will satisfy you. So what will make you happy in your career would be like kind of fulfilling those values. So in that sense, the closer the match, or the more congruity there is between those three factors. So what I'm good at, you know, what I can like kind of do in terms of fulfilling what's required of me, and what's important to me, or what I value most. If you can get like kind of alignment between those, then that tends to give you career satisfaction. So like by way of example, I suppose, say for you might have someone who values working with people, but if that's like kind of for some that might be like kind of a role in marketing, so like kind of personality and skills. Will for others that might be a role in career counseling, and so it's still like kind of valuing like kind of people, but the direction like kind of that someone will go in will differ then depending on other aspects. Why are they important? So as I said, you know, in a work sense, it's because they contributed to like kind of work satisfaction, and because they are kind of often intrinsic, and often things that we don't think about, like kind of, you know, we live our life and this is what's important to us and this is the way we operate, and it's not until we kind of stop and reflect that we kind of start to think, actually, yeah, you know, helping others or making a difference is important to me, and it's not something I want to give up. And that's like kind of, that guides like kind of where we're going. It guides our beliefs, and then it guides our behaviors. If our values are satisfied, it's a motivating aspect, so it helps like kind of motivate us in terms of giving meaning and satisfaction to what we're doing. And then from the company perspective, if we know what like kind of the company values and what's important to them, then that helps us like kind of in terms of knowing that we're on similar paths, so that like kind of we're parallel, or that like kind of, again, you know, we can converge, because what's important to me is also important to like kind of the place that I'm working. But sometimes, and it can happen, that like kind of there will be conflict in work or life, because it clashes with our values, and that can result like kind of in people then like kind of saying, actually, you know, this isn't the kind of environment that I want to work in. This isn't what's important to me. Now, that's something that can happen maybe because there's a change of direction of the company, or a change of like kind of structure within the organization, or it's something that you can kind of recognize over time, because again, values are something that like kind of, while we'll have some core that are intrinsic to us, there are some that will like kind of develop over time. So we will re-examine like kind of what's important to us depending on like kind of what our life circumstances are. So I just actually want to check in here. So are you all okay in terms of slides? So we're on slide 6 of 15 at the moment. So there's a hands up option there if you want to raise your hand at this point, if you're having any trouble viewing slides. If I see no hands raised, I'll know we're good. Great stuff. So yeah, just some examples then in terms of like kind of, you know, I suppose values that would be considered work related. So, you know, some obvious ones are around reward. So getting paid for the work you do. So some people, for them, like kind of the financial reward, the money is what's like kind of their most important thing, or something that's very important for their value. But for others, it might be like kind of around prestige, or it might be around power and influence and making a difference, or managing people. For some people, then it's like kind of around work conditions. So, you know, do I prefer, or am I more happy or more motivated when I'm working alone, or when I'm working in a team? Or if I'm, you know, outside working versus like kind of working in an office-based or inside environment. Do I like to work with others, or like kind of do I prefer to, you know, have that like kind of element of competition, so that while I might like kind of work in teams, there's always that like kind of spirit of competitiveness. And you know, as I said, for some, and I guess this is the thing about like kind of values, if my value is collaboration and I'm working with a colleague who values competition, even the aspect of knowing that can be helpful, because otherwise, like kind of for me, it could seem that the person is like kind of competing with me all the time and we're not working effectively together. So sometimes like kind of having that sense of identifying my own values and knowing my colleagues' values helps then in terms of like kind of work patterns or productivity. So again, you see there like kind of variety, you know, do I value variety versus routine, or risk versus stability? And then some examples around like kind of lifestyle. So again, something that's like kind of really coming to the fore now around remote working and working from home and managing that. Some people who thought they'd love it are kind of going, oh my God, no, I want to get back into the office. I need that. Others are like thriving in the environment. So again, even in terms of like kind of values, the experience like kind of contributes to knowing whether this is something that like kind of motivates or is important to you. So locations, whether it's city or country, or, you know, do you enjoy travel? So these aspects like kind of are examples of work related values, as I said. So now for us to do the activity together. So we're looking at like kind of values, I suppose, in 4 broad categories. So core intrinsic values. So this is driven by my personal life, my working style. These are values that are important to me. Work environment. So the nature of the space and the culture of the company that I work in. So what are the values associated with that? My work interaction. So how I interact with others in the workplace, whether it's like kind of colleagues, clients, students. So what's important for me, or what do I value in that context? And then work activities. So that's like around the tasks and the methods that I use in terms of like kind of my work. So what's important for me in those contexts? So as I mentioned earlier, I both emailed you the Word document that you can download and complete, and I uploaded it to the meeting chat function here on Teams. So if you want to kind of take that now, and you can have a look at it. So I'm going to show you screenshots of those 4 categories, and I'm going to ask you then to think about yourself in the context of the values that are like kind of mentioned in each of those categories. So the task is to decide if the value is always important to you, sort of important, or not important to you. So really the first thing that you're doing in terms of looking at these is seeing, okay, these are values, and where do I stand in relation to them? How important are they to me in the context of, and you can look at it and see, you know, you could look at it in 2 ways. You could say, just in the context of work, how important are these to me? Or in the context of life, because there is a huge overlap between what's important to you in your life context and in your values. So if you've been able to download the document, then you can place an X in the box that you've downloaded. If you haven't, you could just get a sheet of paper and write the kind of like the values that, even if you just pick the ones that are always important to you, you know, those of you who've downloaded can do the other 2, which is the sort of important and not important. The other thing to say is that the definition that like kind of we've given on the worksheet is there to help you to think about like kind of the meaning of the value. But if you have a different definition or your own definition around that, like kind of the words, the values that you see, absolutely feel free to use them. You're under no pressure like kind of to use ours. So the next 4 screens that you're going to see are the 4 different like kind of value areas that I mentioned. And I'll give you like kind of a minute on each screen, and then we'll have a chat then afterwards. So you can either jot them down on a sheet of paper, download from the meeting chat function here on Teams that's live available now, and you can download that in a browser, or you've had the opportunity to download the Word document that I circulated earlier. So the first up are core values. So just take a look at these for a few moments and see how important in your life are the following core values. And just to say, you can, you know, I mean, obviously you can take all of these and divide them into 3 categories, but if they're all always important to you, that's also fine. So there's no limit in terms of the number of values that you can tick as always being important to you. So we might just move on. So these are our core or our intrinsic values. So they're important to me internally, like kind of that I bring into the workplace. And then if we look, the next three then are going to be like kind of related to the workplace. So the first up is the work environment. So in terms of what's important for you and what you value in work environments, just give you another minute to look through these and tick or make a note of those that are always important to you. So again, on this list, there's no requirement for you to take a certain number. You can find them all always important, or a selection of them. Okay, and I'm going to move on now to the third of our four categories, which is work interactions. So this is in terms of working with others. And what is it that's important to you? So what do I value in terms of my interactions with co-workers? So what are the interactions like kind of that are important to you? And you've got the choice, as I said, if you are jotting them down, you might only write the ones that are always important to you. But if you've downloaded the worksheet, you can like kind of make a note of those that are always important, those that are sort of important to you, or those values that really you don't think are important to you. And again, that may be at the moment, because work context and work changes will impact that. So the final of our four categories then are around activities. So what are the activities that you value, that like kind of that are important and that motivate you and that like kind of guide you or align with like kind of your beliefs and like kind of and what's important to you in your life and work context. So again, you have the list here that if you want to take a look at and make a note of those activities that are always important to you. So that's our final of the 4 categories around activities, interaction, environment, and then values that are core or intrinsic to you. The next thing I suppose to think about, if we, if you've completed that exercise, and after completing that, did you have a sense of what your values were already? Did you know what was important to you? And is this giving you like kind of even vocabulary that you can use to kind of describe what's important to you? Or did you discover something new in the process of this exercise? Did you find that you had values that were like kind of always important to you in one category moreover than another? What does that look like? And it'd be interesting to kind of reflect and think about what that might mean for you. So are work interactions like kind of, more important in an always kind of value sense than maybe work environment or work methodology, or how do they fare against like kind of, your core values? And I guess, why are these values important to you? So can you think like kind of back to, maybe family life, or maybe the way you've been like kind of taught how to do things, or again, like kind of, value system that you've inherited, like kind of either through like kind of, your culture, your community, your family, that like kind of that makes you kind of go, okay, now I understand, so my mom was always out like kind of involved in the community, and definitely that's where like kind of part of my desire and my value to like kind of help others and make a difference come from. What is it like kind of that, I suppose, can you see the history or the storyline that might like kind of tie that value to you in terms of its importance? And then, are there potential reasons that you'd have to reprioritize your values? What could they be? What might like kind of it look like if you have to reprioritize like kind of your value? And in that context, have you ever been in a situation that was contradictory to your value? And if so, what like kind of, what did that mean for you? What did you do? Did you stay? Did you leave? How did you deal with like kind of that situation that might have been contradictory to your own like kind of values? And do any of your current values conflict with other aspects of your life? So in relation to roles that you've done or that you're interested in, or your study or friendships, and how do you manage this? What do you do like kind of in terms of dealing with like kind of these conflicts and these potential conflicts? So we might like kind of have a chat about those questions in a moment, and if you've any questions on them, we can like kind of explore them. I suppose what we didn't get to do in terms of the worksheet was look at like kind of from amongst all of those values that you highlighted as always important to you, if I were to put you under pressure and say, right, you have a list now of all of these values from the 4 different sections. If you had to kind of pick 5 that are most important to you in terms of your life and your work, what are the 5 from among the list of those that you said were always important that you would pick? And then even look at like kind of what sections they come from. So if you're 5 always important, are they mainly your core values, or again, as I said, are they like work interactions, or are they work environment? Where do those like kind of values tend to come from within categories? And then, would you be able to write a paragraph about how you would see those top 5 values in your work? What would work look like for you if it were fulfilling like kind of those top 5 values that you selected from the 4 different areas? And again, once you've done that, if you want to explore that and talk through that with one of the careers advisors, we'd be happy for you to, use the Careers Connect function to make an appointment, and we could like kind of discuss that, because sometimes it is through that like kind of, reflecting first and then having the opportunity to kind of discuss that you get like kind of a sense of why the value is important, and how like kind of, how you can use it, how you may have to like kind of, I suppose, compromise with regard to it, and do you have to compromise? I mean, another good activity to kind of sometimes think about is if you've got your top 5 values, and if you had like kind of other colleagues or friends like kind of do a similar exercise and they have their top 5 values, but if you have to work together now and find common values, you know, are there differences, are there similarities, and how would you have to like kind of negotiate and compromise to find that? And sometimes that's something that we have to think about in terms of like kind of work culture. So, you know, work as an organization will have like kind of its values, and ideally what you want is to have your values align with like kind of the organization. But if you're exploring an organization and you just even go into the about function on a website, that'll give you a sense of like kind of what the values are, what the culture is of the company. How does that align with like kind of you? And if you're interested in that company and its values aren't a complete match, how will that impact you? You know, are you comfortable making compromises in terms of like kind of that organization? So that's a very brief introduction to work-based values, and like kind of a short inventory that you can complete you know, within our like kind of 30 minutes. There is a much more comprehensive 144 item inventory that we have through the license that we have with the organization Team Focus. And we've mentioned this on a couple of other live chat sessions because you can go into Team Focus and you can use it to practice psychometric tests like verbal reasoning and numerical. You can do it in terms of looking at your learning style, your personality preference. And so it also has like kind of a values-based inventory. And so once you go into the website that is on the slides here, register with your University of Limerick email address, and then you can access a series of like kind of free well, prepaid for like kind of inventories and questionnaires that you can do. And again, you get a detailed report back from Team Focus with regard to like kind of the results of the questionnaire that you've completed. And then finally, just to say, well, first of all, thank you, but also I mentioned Careers Connect, and that's where you can make an appointment with myself or any of the team. And then these live chats will be available to view up on our YouTube channel. So I'm very happy now to take questions. I might just stop the recording of the session and can take any questions that you might have and you'd like to put to me. So thanks very much.